Hello, my name's Jade and today we will be discussing Hollow City by Ransom. This is the second book in the Miss Peregrine's Home of Peculiar Children series. I already have a video on the first book, which I will link down below. It's one of my older ones, but I think it's one of my better ones. I actually rewatched it before reading this one to get caught up, and I think I did a pretty good job catching myself up, so check that one out if you want. This is the second book in the trilogy. The last book is called Library of Souls. I have actually started it already. I audiobooked this one and I had so much fun audiobooking it. If you didn't know, Audible actually have a website where you can get free audiobooks. They have a sample of their different audiobooks. Stories.audible.com, and both Hollow City and Library of Souls are on there, and that's how I've been listening to them. And the guy that does these audiobooks, Kirby Hayborn, he is great. I had so much fun with this book. I think I owe a lot of it to him. The way he did the voices for each of the different characters, he was really good with the accents, like the old school English accent and the proper English accent, and then the flip to Jacob's really hard American accent, and then Millard's Scottish accent, and then all these random characters that we meet along the way, they would all have different voices and different accents. He was so great at them. And the way he would emphasize certain things, I don't think it would be the way that I would interpret them personally, like the way my brain would make them emphasized, and it made it so much funnier. Highly recommend these audiobooks. And on that note, I did enjoy this one more than the first one. I wasn't in love with the first one because the synopsis, I feel told me most of the story, and so it took me a really long time to get to a point where it was new and exciting. I did really like the end though. I thought the end was really exciting and it made me really excited to read this one, and then I never got around to reading it. And then when I saw that there was free audiobooks, I was like, might as well. I planned to just listen to a little bit, see if I liked it, and before I knew it, I was a couple hours in and I was committed. See, I enjoyed it much more, but I still had one or two problems with it, but I'm very aware that the problems I had with it are things, they're me. It's not you, it's me. You're down to taste. It's nothing major, stylistic things. This one had more of a Percy Jackson vibe to me, in the way that we're going on an adventure and we're kind of going this way and that, and it's crazy fun, almost road trip vibe adventure. So I'd give it, I'm leaning towards a 7.5 because 7 feels too harsh and 8 feels high, so in and around a 7.5. I think I did have a lot of fun reading it. It just wasn't my favorite or anything. I think that's everything I have for the non-spoilery section. I'm going to go into spoilers about the book now. So if you have yet to read Hollow City, I recommend you leave, read the book, come back, and we can discuss it together. Okay, goodbye if you've yet to read Hollow City. I love the covers of these books so much. I think they just have such a cool aesthetic all round, and I talked about this last time about how the paper qualities are really nice and all of the art and stuff inside is really nice. Naked, they're really pretty. And I love the spines. Look at it. This is good quality book right here. Purplepus Anonymous. Whoever this guy is, I was expecting him to have a much bigger role, being that he's written on the book. And is he just some kind of, is he a philosopher or a researcher or something to that effect? Don't really understand why he's on the book if he doesn't have that big a role. Will he come up more? As I said, it's been a while since I read the first one, and I was kind of worried that I wouldn't remember what happened. But between my video and the beginning of this book, Ransom really tries to catch us up. Normally, it kind of annoys me a little bit because I normally go in remembering enough of what's happened to not need to be reminded, but I'm really glad we had that. Thank you, Ransom. And we had a guide at the beginning of all of the characters and what their abilities were, and I'm really glad we had this as well because there were so many kids. I needed to relearn who they all were and what their abilities were. I remember that I really loved Millard. I remember that I wasn't the fondest of Jacob, and I think I grew to like him a little bit more in this one. I think he annoyed me in the first one. I wasn't as irritated by him in this one, so I'm assuming I let that go a little bit. I didn't love Millard as much in this one. I still love him, and I still think he's a great character. I love how smart he was. He's kind of our guide, and he had all these factoids. Still think he's charming and great, but I think I found him to be really funny in the first one, and he wasn't as funny in this one. You know who was funny though? Enoch. Even we're wasting our time type remarks, I would find really funny. He said something about Miss Peregrine or something, and he was so blunt, and I just burst out laughing. And I don't know if it was something to do with the narrator, the way again he was saying these things. But he had a lot of really good lines. I remember finding him really creepy, and I just didn't trust him because obviously he's got screwy morals, but I think I trust him a little bit more. I don't think he's out and out not evil, which is what I think I was worried about him becoming a bad character. Bronwyn, I also really came to love in this one. I love how nice she was, and she has such great morals. There were a couple times where they suggested things and everyone would agree, and I'd be like, why is this okay? Like when they were going to blow up the gypsy camp and she was the only one objecting, everyone else was fine with just like bombing the gypsies. Like, why is that okay? Just because they didn't help you doesn't mean it's okay to kill all of them. And she was like, there were kids in that camp, they were innocent, they didn't know any better, and it ended up being a good thing that they didn't bomb them. Bronwyn was great. She was such a rock and such a mother figure, and I loved how she looked after all the kids. And when they met Sam and Esme and she was like, oh love, we're not gonna all fit in that bath, he gave her her jumper. I remember finding Emma kind of annoying in the first one as well, and I didn't really have as many opinions on her in this one. Like, I'm kind of just different. I feel distanced from the character still. I think because of that, like, I didn't care about as much if Jacob and Emma were annoying. I can see Emma better now, I think, in this one. I understand her more, that she's just got a bit of a temper and she just wants what's right and she's feisty. Jacob, I still think is a little bit flat. He would go through these like thought processes for ages, would be debating everything and anything, pondering things that didn't always need pondering. He felt very dramatic. Because it's first person, it doesn't feel like a 16-year-old's writing. It feels too mature. It's really nice writing. I love a lot of the imagery, but I don't know how well it reflects a 16-year-old's thought processes. But then again, he's quite odd. Yeah, I don't know. Jacob's gift, we learn a lot more about it. When we saw the hollow and his body was like a compass towards it, he could like sense where it's going to be. Roman like threw the rock at it. That was really cool. That's super duper helpful. You can also like sense if they've been there not too long ago, sense like their trail. And then come the end, obviously we find out that he can control them, he can talk to them, and they'll listen to him and they'll do as he says. I wonder how long it's going to take for him to figure this out, because he dismisses everything. He's quite pessimistic, a realist, I guess. It slows the story down sometimes. Believe in yourself, man, just for once. Or just, if nothing else, believe in Emma who believes in you. The end was crazy. The end was probably my favorite part of the book, with the twist that it wasn't Miss Peregrine this whole time, which I didn't see coming. I assumed it was her, and I put down all of her weird behaviors to her animal instincts. Like when she killed the pigeon, I assumed that was like animal instinct taking over. It's a hunting bird. Ambulance popping tire, that could also come into that category, although I don't quite understand how. How is he communicating with all of his like crew as well? Were they watching him, like bird watching him? Addison, I really loved, and I loved that he came back in the end, so I'm assuming he's gonna be at least in the beginning of the next book, which really excites me. Look at him, he's so cute. My first dog that we ever had was a boxer, and so I have a bit of a soft spot for boxers. I just automatically loved Addison. Really interesting that Tales of the Peculiar like bears semblance. I want to know more about that. Which way around it was. Were the stories based on real things that happened? These things inspire the story and they're just clues about real life loops and stuff maybe? What is the purpose? Is it just their kind of mark loops, or are these like other things, like other historical things that they could be based upon? I want to know more about that. I think that's really interesting. I also didn't see the peculiar animal thing coming, and it's suspending belief a lot, I think, that section. Addison, I'm okay with, because it's a talking dog. I think because it kind of has a humanistic side to it, like it makes sense. The emu wrath was crazy. And Armageddon eggs, if it became like a major plot point in this, then that would have, the belief, it would have like taken away from it. I don't know more about how it came to be, maybe, because right now it's just kind of a thing that's there. Oh, there was one really cheesy line about his love for Emma, how he described it as an invisible cord that ran between the two of them. I can't remember the beginning of their relationship in Miss Peregrine. Can't really comment too much about it. There was a comment about the gypsies about how they knew the old tongue. And there was a guy there who could roar. Was he peculiar? Or just have a cool party trick? They also have an invisible kid, so it seems like they have peculiars among them. They said that they can speak the old tongue, and I think the world building of this was really cool because the way it was done, everything's not fleshed out. We still have so many questions. We only know kind of what the kids have told us. We're assuming the kids know more than they're telling us. They're kind of just telling us stuff as it becomes relevant. We have so much more to learn, but I love that. The fact that we just touch things and then we don't really go into too much depth. And it gives it this whole mysterious vibe to it. And you can tell that there's so much history there. Like Old Tongue, for instance, there's an old language. It just makes it sound so rich and mysterious and cool. And I love the premise and the way he's done the world building. So well done. I loved Millard's interaction with the invisible boy. I thought it was really sweet. And I think Millard has a really interesting story going on about how he kind of wants to turn his invisibleness on and off. Their talk on the train when he said to Jacob, "Don't feel sorry for from me. Him in front of the mirror, like, how do I look? They just shot him down. I'm hoping we'll come to peace with this storyline. He has some resolution there because I think he's got a really interesting thing going and it adds some nice complexity to the book. They get captured by the Whites. Is there one leader or is there just like a bunch of leaders? Like, who's in charge? Because Peregrine guy, Cal, cool. He seems like he's got like a pretty fair stance on things. I want to know more about how they're being run. Mr. White, he was really fun, at least from the audiobook. He sounded very eccentric. I think he's one of the more fun villains. Now, go ahead, son, and tell me where the bird is. She's in the drawer, said Horace. Mr. White's unibrow knit together. The drawer? What drawer? Same one she's always been in, said Horace. He shook Horace by the jaw and shouted, what drawer? Horace started to say something, then closed his mouth, swallowed hard, stiffened his back. His eyes came open and he looked hard into Mr. White's and said, your mother's knickers drawer, and he spat right in Mr. White's face. You go, Horace, power to you. I loved how we just got such a better view of each of the individual kids, and that whole scene was quite fun. Hugh saves the day quite a few times, as does Emma. Those two we need, it would seem. On the train, we have a conversation about how like peculiars have something that normal people lack. Jacob was like, I like this way of thinking that I'm not weird, like I have something extra. Like, what were you thinking it was? It can't be that you're lacking something. It still feels like he feels like there's something wrong with him. Why? Because he sees all these other peculiar people and they own it and they're so cool and he knows that they're cool. And we have the really cool discussion about how they have their second soul. I mean, it was like, oh, this was speculation. Whites were taking their souls and giving them to the Hollows, and that's how they could go through the loops now. That was really interesting. And we just have this really interesting conversation about their history, and I just love the mythology there. It's so interesting, the fact that these kids are old, but then their development was stunted, right? So they're still kind of kids, like especially the young ones. And they have this weird mixture of like feeling wise and aged, like they've seen a lot in the world. They haven't at the same time because they've only ever been with Miss Peregrine. Although Millard references the old days, like when you could go on tours and stuff. Jacob says it's as if he's reminiscing on old memories. So did they get to do all this gallivanting? Were they alive to see the beginning of the Whites? Because I was under the impression that they hadn't, that they'd always been with Miss Peregrine in the loop. They also have this like childish, immature feeling to them, and the way they act, they don't always think through actions, they just kind of do them. They frustrated me a little bit though. There were some times I wanted them to slow down and there were some times where I wanted them to speed up. And we figure out that Hollows can sense peculiars. Jacob figures this out, especially when they use their powers, and you think this would be common knowledge. You think someone would have figured this out at some point. It's kind of weird to me that Jacob needed to figure that out. We have Melina and the two Echolator twins. I love the Echolator twins. I think they're so interesting. I loved how they came to play in the end. Not as big a fan of Melina. She reminds me of Emma a little bit, and so I feel like those two aren't going to get on because they're too similar. And it's interesting how the kids have to go before them when they're coming out of the loop to make it 1940s. The loops, I feel like, because we use them so often, we've got a decent amount of information. Some of it I feel like is contradicting, and like this whole idea of aging forward isn't really fleshed out. Like those men in the Melina loop, they had decided to age forward, but we don't really understand how it aged forward. Like I keep going back to the apple. They experimented with the apple, it died. The kids went back to the present and they didn't, and it feels like the kids don't really have a strong idea of it either because they had to experiment with the apple. So how does aging forward work? Because now they're in the present. It's obviously not an immediate thing because they've been here before, and they keep talking about the present. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the present relative? Obviously this is the present, but someone living in 1940, that was the present. Like, who deciphers the present? Obviously present is Jacob's time, it's modern day, but why isn't it years beyond then? Just of the way time and space works, isn't it all like relative? I'm not a physicist, so landing of time and space is that it's not necessarily like one straight line and that we're just moving along. It's like one of those things that like I can feel in my brain that I know, but I can't make it into words. The two sisters in the bathtub, that kind of was unbelievable to me because the fact that they just jumped off the train and were reunited with one another, sure. And I think it was things like that that made the story feel younger than it was. It very much reminded me of Percy Jackson, and it kind of had a young feel to it at times, and that's not a bad thing. I think it just lends itself to the immaturity aspect, the fact that these kids feel younger and the story felt younger than it was. Those bulletproof sweaters, that was a thing. It was awfully convenient. And Millard said that the fact that we've not heard about her and she has such an interesting power like proves that she's going to die. How would you have heard about her? Because she's in your time. Have there been present day books that have like gone back in time to 1940s where you're living, Millard? How does that work out? It seems like they know the future as well. If nothing else, there's information being sent back from them from the future. If that's the case, then they can just tell them how this wit thing's gonna end up, this white thing. That was kind of skimmed over and confused me. There are a couple, I think, slip-ups with Englishisms versus Americanisms, like the date at one point. Date at some point was 9/3/40, but it would have been 3/9/40. Someone says pants. I mean, he does say trousers again, but why does he say pants at first? Because Jacob's the only American happened there? Tourist loops, the carnival loop was kind of fun, and them kind of putting the clothes on to be in the right time period, and we learn about punishment loops. The tourist loops I think were particularly interesting, and like the Grand Tour, kind of like a reference to like the real Grand Tour that people would go around in the 1800s. And then we have this Sindragashi snake person. What did the gypsy guy call them? Wasn't that Cindergrassy as well? Was Cindergrassy just peculiar? I don't know. I thought there was a snake girl and she had a particular name. These are snake peculiars. So to the peculiar archives, and that's really cool. And the map of days, which the 4th book I think in this series is now called. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. And they're talking about this army and how the kids decide they don't want to fight. So I was saying that the whole time. Why don't you just wait and see what Miss Peregrine says? Because ultimately you're gonna do what she says either way, I would imagine. It's interesting that they're her responsibility, yet they're old enough to think for themselves, and they've done all this stuff on their own without her, but they feel this need for her because they're her mother. They're too old to have like this mother figure. It's weird and interesting and cool. I think we're probably going to join that army and help up come 3rd book. Not necessarily join their army and fight, because I mean they've all been captured now for one. I can't imagine leaving the trilogy, just saving Miss Peregrine and that being it. I think it's going to have to be something bigger, more involved with the Hollows and the Whites and the state of the world, it would seem. The fact that like his only reason to stay was Emma, and that the fact he didn't want her now meant what was the point of him even being here? That whole situation really annoyed me. Why is she your only reason for being there? I thought it was the fact that you found your people and that your real life was meaningless. Like every time he thought about going back to his real life, he just kind of cringed. His rich parents and how weird he was, he didn't fit in, and now he's found somewhere that he belonged. Why is she your only reason for staying? I did like how much he thought about his parents in this one, and that felt really real. And I loved at the end the fact that he answered the phone call to his dad. That was really sweet. This whole Emma debacle just didn't sit right with me. The fact that she decided now that they couldn't be together, like what had she been doing this whole time then? Was she just leading him on? Emma also says that she could send Jacob letters the way she did to his grandfather, so Jacob would just also become like a forgotten old flame. It's just so weird, the parallels in a relationship. It's weird. Don't get me wrong, I think it suits this weird peculiar book very well though. And then of course we have the whole end section with her brother, which was crazy. He'd been manipulating this whole time, so Miss P could be anywhere. They trusted him. Mrs. Wren tried to make some kind of bargaining with him, and it's like, okay, yeah, you're right. Just let me to a window and I'll shout down to my men. Why would you believe him? He's obviously not going to give up that easily. Mrs. Wren was really gullible as well. Althea threatened to stab her and they ran towards him, and then Bronwyn stopped them. Why would you stop running if he's threatening to kill her? Because she's so valuable. If she dies, that all of the ice is going to melt, which it did, and they're all going to come surging in, which they did. So why wouldn't you work harder to stop that from happening? Like, why did Mrs. Wren only run over there after she had died? And then the end section where Emma breaks them out. It was so cool. Addison there, and he's dragged them away. How many has he dragged away? Is it just Emma and Jacob? Emma and Jacob obviously hatched things up. They told each other that they love each other. So I'm hoping that whole little fight between them is over now. I'll have to figure out another time what's going to actually happen with Jacob and if he's going to stay. Yeah, that ending was just really great. And it reminded me a lot of Miss Peregrine's, where most of the book was kind of slow and then the ending was really fast paced and fun and action packed. I know we're going on all these adventures and stuff, but I do just still feel a bit of a slowness in this one. And again, I think it's to do with the writing style. Kind of mature, well seasoned, kind of very antique-y feeling there. Similar to the last one, where we've now got this huge setup for the last book, so I wonder how that's going to play out. I wonder if I'm going to like it more than this one, because I definitely anticipated liking this one more than Miss Peregrine's. This one almost has a bit of a fillery feeling to it. We're trying to get Miss Peregrine out of bird form this whole time. It's the only thing that's kind of driving us through this book. And come the end, obviously we find it's not even Miss Peregrine, so we still need to find her. Stakes weren't as high, it was just the stakes were high because we thought she was going to turn into a bird, but I was anticipating in the last book that's happened maybe like halfway through, and then the rest of it start our quest to stop the Whites. Feeling I'm gonna like this last one even better than this one, but we'll see. I don't want to go with too high expectations just in case. 7.5, I think. 8, maybe. 7.5 or 8. That is everything I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an awesome morning, afternoon / night. My name's James. I hope I see you again next time. Goodbye. And you know, the mail, that's how parcels come, if you didn't know. You can see the shadow of my mic. Ugh. They said it was like the 3/9/40, but we, like the day at one point was 3/9/40, but it would have been, no.